I will show you everything you need to know to read the IMX API with the help of Chat GPT to understand anything you want to know about Illuvium and the IMX blockchain. As many may know, I've used this method for years to build a wide range of spreadsheets, scripts, and other tools to provide high quality analysis in my YouTube videos. Now, if you are curious on any IMX metrics such as active users, total assets in Illuvium, or even which Illuvials get traded the most, this tutorial will help you understand the fundamentals to get you there. Also, before we proceed, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who supported me throughout the years. Now, the thing I'm going to go through to make this entire tutorial is I'm going to get ChatGPT to create a chart for me so I can see the top 10 wallets that own Atlas Illuvials. I don't know if this is particularly helpful in your use case, but everything I teach you today will be transferable to anything else you might need to do. And if it isn't necessarily, just leave a comment down below and I will have a look and respond the best I can. The first thing we need to understand is the IMX API. This is the most important part of this entire thing. The one thing they don't seem to tell you, and even if it is on their website, I haven't been able to find it, is that they have a rate limit. Now, I'm going to assume I'm talking to beginners here when it comes to coding, scripts, anything else. So if you're a beginner, don't worry, you're right at home. I will explain everything properly. When I started, believe me, things were not explained thoroughly and it made my life more difficult. So a rate limit is basically if you're the IMX company and someone's trying to get information from your server and they're getting like 1,000 pieces of data every half a millisecond, right? Then they might limit you and be like, okay, your IP address is blocked for the next 5 minutes. And then you get completely destroyed, right? It's going to make your life a living nightmare. But IMX's rate limit is 5 calls every second. So you can call the IMX API 5 times in every second and you will never, ever have any issues with rate limiting. But if you're trying to run like 4 scripts at once, you'll probably run into issues, right? Because you can't call 5 times a second on 4 scripts at the same time. So you need to live within these parameters. Once you do, everything else isn't too bad. So I need to quickly first explain to you the API itself. Here it is right here. Now, I know you can't see the URL at the top, but it's docs.immutable.com/x/reference/hashtag/operations. And then we have the section I'm in. In my case, we're going to be mostly looking at the assets endpoint. But what I want to point out is you can do a whole range of different things with this. You can do balances where it gets a list of balances for a given user. You can do things like collections, so you can get a list of collections. You can do things like get a list of deposits. Mints, get a list of mints. There is some really cool stuff you can have a look at here. But what's interesting is you need to start getting really creative once you go deeper into this rabbit hole. We're not going to go to that more advanced stuff. Some of the things I do, I use 3 or 4 of these in conjunction with one another. But if you're using just one of them, it can actually be really simple and really easy to do, especially with the help of ChatGPT. So we're going to use the assets endpoint here. Now, before I even talk to ChatGPT, I need 2 things. Otherwise, ChatGPT is going to have a lot of trouble, okay? This is very important. I need the IMX API call, which is essentially a URL, and I'll show you that in a second. And I need the response from that URL. After that, it's really easy to get ChatGPT to do anything you need it to. So let's start with the call. Our mission today is to see the top 10 wallets that own Atlas Illuvial. And so in the right here, we have something called parameters. Now, not every API setup will actually give this to you, but IMX does a really good job of giving you everything you need to know. What we want to search through is we want to search for the name, which is Atlas. We should filter by the address so that we're only getting things in the Illuvium Illuvial's address for NFTs. And that's really all we need from this response. Also down the bottom, you can see the number of responses you can get in a given page. 200, 400, and 500. If you click on the 400 and 500, you see that they don't actually work. 200 is the standard for pretty much all of the IMX APIs, so I would stick with it. If you don't do 200, your life is it's gonna suck. It's gonna take you way too long to do anything. So all I will do is I will put 200 in this little parameter thing. The next thing we need is name. I will type in Atlas. You want to make sure you spell these correctly. An easy way to do that is if you go over to the Illuvidex, I've already filtered by line and type for Atlas, is in the top URL. You can't see it here. Wait, maybe I can fix that. There you go. In the top URL, you can see what it's filtered by. It's got illuvidex.illuvium.io / all that stuff. And it has alluvial-name equals Atlas. And so that spelling there should be correct. When you get to things like Matmut and stuff, they have like really weird apostrophes and things like that. So if your code or script isn't working, that might be part of the reason. So you need to be careful around spelling and even capitalization. If I do this Atlas name with a lowercase a, there's a chance it might not work depending on how people have set up the API. So we need to keep all of that in mind when we're doing that. The other thing we need to do is we need to set a collection address. So we want to make sure it's the alluvial collection that we're looking at. If we go over to a Mutascan here, which is my preferred way of finding this information, we can go to Illuvium alluvials, and the collection address will just be right at the top here. You can also pull it by pulling the IMX API for collections and pulling the names of all the collections, but I like doing it this way. It's a lot simpler, and we can go through it from there. And there we put in the collection address. We're almost there. The last thing we can add in here is actually order by. Now, we don't have to do this, but I like to do it. And depending on how far you take your scripts and things like that, I highly recommend using it. But I like to do updated at. And so when it finds the information, for example, if it goes to find if I was searching for just all alluvials and I sorted this by updated at, the first page of responses, the first 200, would be based on the most recent alluvials created. If I set it to name, then the first 200 pages would be whatever the very first alluvial is by alphabetical. So it will pull all the probably atlases first, and then it will pull all the axons and so on and so forth. I have no idea if that is actually the first alluvial by name, but anyways, you get the point. In my case, we're going to do updated at. And that is pretty much everything we need. We can actually sort by user, which is actually how I do a lot of my spreadsheets with IMX APIs and stuff as well, where you put in your wallet and I automatically send it into this field here, and then it shows you all that sort of stuff. So the next thing we need to do is we need to copy this URL right here. Just below there, we have request sample shell CURL. You want to copy that URL. However, here's one thing you might miss. This URL at the very start has https /api.sandbox.immutable.com/ and then all the rest of it, okay? At the start, it has that word sandbox, which as many might know if they've played the testnet beta, is actually the testnet of the API. I don't know how to find out. Some of these have sandbox in their default URL, some of them don't. All you need to know is if you have sandbox in there, it's searching the testnet. If you don't have sandbox in there, it's searching just the regular URL. So we are actually going to put that into our top here. We're going to remove the word sandbox. And we're going to copy that URL and put it into Chat GPT. We're not going to hit enter yet. We've got a few more things to do first. So if we hit enter and search this URL, we're going to get this, okay? This is where it starts to get really fun. Now, I don't know if every single browser has this, but in the Brave browser, you actually have this pretty print thing in the top left. If I tick that, it's going to show me it a lot nicer. Let's put it that way. Okay. So it shows the result and it shows a range of different names. So what's important here is we need to check that it worked. For example, if you did Ramfy, it actually only shows you RAM fights because of the way they've set up the API, and it's a little bit broken. I have notified their team and hopefully they're fixing it. So all I'm saying is you need to double check and make sure that it works properly. In this case, it looks like we're getting just atlases and we're not getting any axons or axodons because they're not close enough in name to actually happen. But with things like Ramfight and Ramfire, you might actually get both of them in the call. So you need to carefully go through this, have a look, and just consider all those sorts of options. In this case, it looks perfectly fine. Every single response I'm getting is an atlas, has a status, burned, URI, null, name, atlas, so on and so forth. We have a lot of different information here. We have the token ID, the token address, the set, the line, the path. Most of this information is not shown on the Illuvidex, and they're actually really fascinating. Even down the bottom here, we have unique random stats number, which is somehow giving the team the information for the random stats. I don't know how to decipher it myself, but it's quite interesting. You also have created at and updated at. My guess for updated at is, for example, created at is when it's minted, and updated at is if information has changed. So for example, if the owner address changes because you sell it or burn it, then it would be updated at a different timestamp to create it. So that's where it all starts to get really interesting. We also have the SBL number. And what many don't realize is there's actually a production ID, which is the type of line it is. In this case, it's number 1, axolotl, stage 1, default, original. So there is a lot of information here, but you get to do some really fun stuff with this. An example is something you can't really find on chain, or it's not easy, is there's a shard captured with right here, which is 2158236. So if I pulled a list of every atlas, and then I pulled a list of every shard, and I said, ChatGPT, figure out if a rare shard was used to capture an atlas and how many times that happened, ChatGPT would be able to do that. So we're going to go through all that sort of stuff today in case you do want to analyze that sort of thing when it comes to this. So the second thing we're going to copy is we're just going to drag this down. I like to grab about 3 responses, but you can go further depending on what you need. ChatGPT is pretty good now. I'm going to go with, we're going to go with 3 responses today. I think that's quite good. Try and grab all of it, copy. It doesn't even matter if you like finish this copy like halfway through a thing and stuff. ChatGPT is smart enough to figure it out. We're actually going to hold Shift Enter a bunch of times and then paste that. And now is the fun part. Now is where we actually start asking ChatGPT what to do. And here it is. Can you please analyze? Sorry, I've never done this typing while talking thing before. Can you please analyze the IMX blockchain to pull a CSV of every single atlas that has ever been created and exists on the blockchain? All right. Now, a CSV is what I can only describe as a spreadsheet and kind of similar to an Excel file. The difference is that it is formatted differently, so things like ChatGPT can read it easily, and it can hold a lot more data. Like a CSV can get to like 10 gigabytes of size, and Excel just won't open it anymore, even though an Excel will open one that's like 1 megabyte in size, but it still does have all that data. So that's kind of the difference between a CSV and an actual Excel file. They're essentially the same thing. It's a table with columns, rows, and all the rest of it. Okay. And then after that, I will say, here is the API call I am using to find all the atlas. And then after that, I will talk about the result. Here is the response that is distributed by the API call. Okay, so basically we're explaining how the IMX API stuff works for ChatGPT. Now I could hit enter here, but ChatGPT likes to get a bit extreme and starts just writing scripts off the bat when it doesn't have all of the information. So I like to make sure I get all of the information in at once before I start going down the rabbit hole. Otherwise, you can actually overly confuse ChatGPT and have some issues down the line. So if I go to the very bottom of the chat, hit Shift Enter a few more times, I can keep talking. But I quickly forgot to mention which ChatGPT version we're actually using. Up in the top right here, you can see that we're using ChatGPT 4.0. Now, I do have ChatGPT. I have OpenAI Plus, or the paid subscription or whatever, which gives me a lot of extra time to speak with the software before it actually starts to cut you off and lag, or say you have to wait 3 hours or whatever. So I do get a lot of access, but everyone does have ChatGPT 4.0 for free right now. And in my experience, it's a lot smarter than just 4. And so I highly recommend using this version. So after that, we'll say, I said Python script at the start, didn't I? Oh, okay. Can you please analyze the IMX blockchain to create a Python script that pulls a CSV? That is probably better. We're going to teach you a little bit of Python today. Honestly, I don't understand Python a shit, and I've been doing this fine for a long time, so you probably don't need to worry about it. Anyways, I've told it to create a Python script that will use all of this information I've given it to write a script that can pull all this information off the blockchain and write it into a CSV. At the end of that, I'm going to say, I think that's fine. Oh, okay. So the other thing we need to consider is we need to teach it a little bit about the API. The IMX API has a rate limit of 5 calls per second. I like to do a lot of separate lines. I don't think there's any need to overcomplicate it. There's something to be said about the more information you give ChatGPT, the better. But at the same time, you can over confuse it and just make things worse at some point as well. So just keep things clear and concise if you can. And if it needs more detail, then do that. This script. The last thing we should probably mention, because it doesn't like to do this on its own, don't forget to paginate through the cursor until you hit the end of the IMX calls. Now, pagination and cursors are something you probably don't know about yet. A cursor is kind of this thing that is shown at the end of a call. I might be able to show you. So at the very end of a call, you'll have this thing called a cursor. It's right down the bottom here. There's only one in the call, to my understanding. And basically, it's like a page number. So if you have like a book and it's got like, at the bottom right-hand corner, it says like page 1. That's kind of like what the cursor is, but it's language that a computer can understand quite well because every single page needs an individual cursor. And so what happens is if you know to go to page 2 or page 3 or page 4, it needs to pass through the cursor to find the next page. ChatGPT is really good at building that, so you shouldn't have any issues. But you need to not forget to tell ChatGPT to actually do that. And so after this, we'll hit enter and see what it says. To accomplish this task, we will write a Python script that utilizes the IMX API to pull data on all Atlas entities, paginating through the results until all data is retrieved. The data will then be saved to a CSV file. Here's the script. Now, here's an interesting thing before we proceed, is even once we get to that point where it's written us a script and things like that, you do need to use some of your own creativity. In this case, it's actually going to be storing all this information on your GPU or your CPU right up until the point where it actually writes it to the CSV. So if it's pulling like a crap ton of information, your CPU's memory could fill up and then it could just stop and you'll have to start all over again. And it might take a long time because you're pulling only 5 calls a second. So you need to consider a lot of these factors before you go into this stuff. And you can be like, ChatGPT, write it in bits and pieces to the CSV so I don't have to wait. And ChatGPT, don't overwrite the CSV every single time I run this, or write a new CSV or whatever. Like, you need to consider some of those factors. But after you've done this once and you find those problems, you'll start to be like, okay, I kind of understand where this is going. So I'm not going to go over it into detail here, but know that any issue you have, you can ask ChatGPT to fix it for you. That is the best part of this entire system. So it's written as a really neat script. The script will query the IMX API for all Atlas, handle pagination using the cursor, respect the rate limit by adding a delay between API calls, collect all data and write it to a CSV named atlas_data.csv, and ensure you have the request library installed. If not, you can install it using pip install request. Okay, so the only other thing I should teach you before we proceed is Python installation. But I never remember how to do it myself, and so we're going to ask ChatGPT how to do it. For this, I'm going to say, can you please show me how to install everything necessary to run Python and get this script working? And it's going to tell us. Step 1, install Python. Download the Python installer from the official website, run the installer, and so on and so forth. You guys should be able to do that. If you don't, it's giving you the link and everything. I've already got it installed, obviously. Open a terminal. Install Homebrew if you haven't already by running this. You can simply copy the code and run it. I will show you how to run it. So in my case, I like to hit the Windows key and then type CMD, and that will bring up the command prompt. I have copied the code. As you can see, you can just click the little copy code button. I've got the command prompt, and I just Control V on the command prompt. I don't know what's happening. Oh, this is Mac OS. Sorry. So for Windows, you download it from the official website. For Mac, you do this, which I can't show you. For Linux, you do this, which I can't show you. So that is all good. Step 2, install necessary Python packages. You'll need the request library to make API calls, and CSV is included in the Python standard library. Great. But all we need to do is we need to type in pip install requests and hit enter. In my case, I already have it, so that it already just pops up with the requirement already satisfied. But in your case, it will quickly download some stuff and install it. And then the last thing we're going to do is just run the script. So I'll show you how to actually get the script running. So we'll go up to the top of this script here. We'll hit the little copy code button and we'll open up our notepad. Now you can use this with regular notepad. I prefer something called Notepad++. In hindsight, let me show you on a regular notepad. Let's make it simple. You can just go to the Windows key, type in Notepad, you can find the Notepad. So Control V will actually paste it in here, and we have the script. And then we'll go File, Save As. Never go to Spectrix. I just made something. I made a folder called Chat GPT on one of my drives. And I'm just going to call this, Atlas. I think what he liked was Atlas data _ data.txt. So we're just going to save it there. I'll close this. I don't need it anymore. So we have atlas.txt. Now, this has to be a Python script. If you don't have Python installed, this won't really work that great. But go into your script here. You can see atlas._data.txt. Click that. Click it again to change its name. And actually change this extension at the end to py, which signifies a Python script. You can just hit yes here. I'm sure I want to change it. And now it is a Python script and we can run it. But you need to make sure the terminal is at the right location or it won't run the script. For example, if I just open terminal right now and said run atlas.py, it's not necessarily going to work. And so instead, I like to actually click the top bar here to make it blue and so I can copy it and stuff. And you can actually type CMD inside this bar and it will open a terminal. And as you can see right at the left here, Z Chat GPT, it's actually at the correct folder already for me. This is my favorite trick that I'm showing you right now. Don't spread it too much, but it's a lot of fun, okay? And so all I need to do now is I need to run the script. Now there are two ways you can do this, with Python or Python 3. Everyone might have a slightly different installation, so I would try both. In my case, it's Python, but you can do Python or you can do Python 3. The rest is the same. In my case, it's Python. I do atlas_data.py. I just hit enter and it should start running. If it doesn't and it throws an error, I can send that error to ChatGPT and I'm all good. So one of the things that we're missing here is even though it's running and I assume running perfectly fine, it doesn't actually show me logs of it running. You can just be like, ChatGPT, add into the script that I want to see every single time it adds a new entry or it finds a new entry. And so it'll just pop up with information as it goes. But in this case, it says data for all Atlas entities has been written to atlas_data.csv. And if we open atlas.data_data.csv, we can see all of the atlases here, all the token IDs, their status, their description, their image URL, their line. We can see their finish. We can see how many hollows and dark hollows and stuff like that there are, and everything. Now, my general preference is to actually take this CSV and make another Python script and be like, make me a Python script that gives me a chart or an image or outputs a number or something like that. But in our case, we're actually going to keep it even simpler. And here's the best part. Is you can actually give CSVs to ChatGPT now. All right. So if I take the CSV and I drag it onto ChatGPT, I can ask it whatever I want. Okay. I do recommend opening the CSV to verify the information. Like if I open it and I hit Control F to find different things inside it, and I type in like axon, it says we couldn't find any axons. Axodon, we couldn't find any axodon. So There's no axons or axodons in there, so we know that it's probably all pretty correct information. It's good to double check things, but you'd be surprised how easy it is for this sort of stuff to get errors in it in some way. So I've given it the spreadsheet, and now I can ask ChatGPT anything I want. I can say, how many hollow, dark hollow, and color atlases exist? It will import the CSV, and hopefully, since it helped us write the CSV, it will understand exactly which column has which information and so on and so forth. So it will import it, it will write its own Python scripts to analyze it, and then it will output numbers. It says there are 1,070 hollow atlases, 0 dark hollow atlases, and 1,709 color atlases. And then I could say, can we exclude anything that's been burned? And see, here is where we find an interesting issue, okay? It actually got this wrong because it doesn't know what to search for. And sometimes we have to be as explicit as we possibly can. I was somewhat hoping we were going to get an issue to pop up because I need to show you how to troubleshoot that sort of stuff. So if we open the CSV quickly, we can see if we Control F and we search for the word dark, we can see that the finish here is hollow. Oh, this is really hard to see. I'm going to zoom in. We have hollow, dark hollow, and color right here. But you can see the dark hollow does not have a space in between it. That's important because ChatGPT didn't recognize that and it searched for dark hollow as separate words. We can even see it in here where it searched for it and it searched for it as separate words. You don't need to understand this stuff, but just know that you can be like, okay, something went wrong. Can you double check what went wrong? And sometimes it's a little bit tricky, but I'm giving you a trick of the trade. Just search it for yourself. Go into the CSV, look for dark hollows yourself, try a bunch of different search terms and be like, okay, it probably got the wrong text. After excluding the burned atlases, we got this. Now can we do that again and search for dark hollow as one word like this, also ensuring dark hollow, the hollow search doesn't include dark hollow. I love this stuff, guys. It's one of my favorite things ever. And now we have a brand new answer. So, contains the following number of non-burn atlases based on their finish type. So we're excluding all the burned atlases. We've got 890 hollow atlases, 28 dark hollow atlases, and 1,575 remaining atlases. And so the last question we have to finish up what we're after in this video is create me a leaderboard based on owners for Atlas alluvials. And then, now I've never actually tried this, okay? Create me a top 10 leaderboard based on owners for Atlas alluvials. I've never tried this, but I really want to. Give me an image for it. So it's going to figure out all the top 10 Atlas owners. Hopefully it's going to split it into hollow, dark hollow, and color, but it's probably not going to. And then it's going to spit out some sort of image. So I have no idea what that's going to look like. Oh, so create a literal graph. That is perfectly fine. So we can see that the number one owner has 50-something owners. Number two, 50-something. Then we got 40, 30, 20, and most of them actually have 10 atlases. So if you have 10 atlases or close to 20 atlases, you're in the top 10 of owners for atlases in Illuvium. I can download the image here. Make me a flashy leaderboard image instead. Let's see what happens. I'm excited to see. It's going to look really weird. That is not what I expected. Okay, so it can't do everything. All right. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to get a full leaderboard. Generate me a full leaderboard CSV for Atlas, ranked based on total Atlas, but it includes information for quantity of hollow, dark hollow, and color alluvials. There you go. Generate me a full leaderboard. So hopefully it's going to spit out a CSV that we can download and have a look at really quickly. I'm looking forward to it. The full leaderboard is right here. So it's got Atlas leaderboard. We can actually just expand this and have a look at it. And you can see all the different wallets and all their numbers and things like that. You probably even search for your own wallet. You could Control F and actually search for it, which is pretty funny. Count. So the top wallet has 10 of the hollows, no dark hollows, and 44 colors. The second wallet's like collecting the hollow atlases like completely. There's more hollows than everyone else. Fourth wallet's doing a similar thing. Seventh wallet is doing something similar as well. You can see the sixth wallet just has 22 atlases. So you can see he's just catching them in the wild. We love to see it. There's just a lot of information here. So we did it. We got the leaderboard for Atlas Alluvial. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and you learned something valuable. And if you did, then please use my referral code in the settings of your Illuvium profile, Scoriox, SCORIOX. Once again, Scoriox. And if you want more videos like this, then please let me know. I'm happy to do a more advanced guide and we get into some crazy stuff. Although this is a long video, so I don't know how long that one would be. And I recommend watching this video next, where I break down my new perspective on Illuvium and its future.